look, the great irony here is most progressives agree overwhelmingly with some version of this direction. And that is what's so frustrating to so many of us. As we're trying to agree and figure out what's the best strategy for what concessions do you ask and what vote do you pursue it in, there's like a howitzer ripping through the progressive movement going, sell out, shill, crook, fraud, etc. Like, hold on, let's all figure out how to strategize together. No, don't strategize, just be, right? Okay, all right, but that's why I say in this case, in this vote, we go, okay, and then no progressive runs for the spot. Then we lose credibility. So we asked for a thing that we could not get. Our own progressives wouldn't support us. And so, by the way, David, so that's why they have no end game, and I think they pretty much admit they have no end game. They just want to rage into the abyss, and I don't blame them for that. There's actually tons and tons of good reasons for righteous anger, and you have it, and I have it, and we've been ostracized by the mainstream media and the establishment Democrats because of our righteous anger, and it could actually be very productive, which I'm going to get to next. But saying do a thing that we know you can't do, or are not going to do in this case, is so counterproductive. And so, hence, I want to go and finish up this particular vote with one last thing. David, if we were gonna do this, and I wouldn't even be against any of this if we had done it right from the beginning. We would go and find a progressive who's actually willing to run against Pelosi, so we don't get embarrassed in the caucus when they say, okay, now here's a vote, who's gonna, you guys block the vote for Pelosi, so who's your candidate? And crickets, there's no candidate. So my sense is you go ahead of time, you figure out someone who's actually gonna run against Pelosi. By the way, this might be the case in 2022. Then you vote in the caucus before you go and risk anything with Republicans or blue dog Democrats or anything like that. That's a smart, strategic, planned out way of doing it. And then you come with a list of demands along the lines of what you just said and what you have on the Daily Poster. Does that make more sense?
Well, I certainly think that does make more sense over the long haul. And I think that, look, Pelosi has faced challenges in the past. Unfortunately, they have frankly been challenges on her right. She has gotten challenges from conservative Democrats. I think that Nancy Pelosi doesn't represent the progressive movement. I don't think that's controversial to say. I think it's pretty clear that she doesn't represent the progressive wing of the Democratic Party or the Democratic caucus in the House. And you would really like to see a progressive candidate to run for leadership. I think, I've heard the fears of that. There's a fear that, well, if Pelosi had run for speaker and then a progressive had run for speaker, that then a blue dog Democrat would run for speaker, and you'd end up with actually an outwardly conservative Democrat winning that caucus race. I mean, those are the kinds of battles that actually need to happen, and they haven't happened. It's long overdue for them to happen.
Yeah, so we're totally agreed on that. I actually don't mind losing to a blue dog in that way. I mind losing to a blue dog when you didn't have a plan going in, you force a vote that you have no candidate for. And then some blue dog comes in and goes, okay, I'll run. And then they get a majority and then they're worse than Pelosi. Well, that's the kind of non-planning I just can't stand. It drives me nuts when people don't think through their plans. So on the other hand, if you had planned out ahead of time and you've got somebody who's raised their hand, they're gonna run against Pelosi, and you risk a blue dog winning because you're splitting within the caucus, David, I don't know about you, I'm perfectly happy to do that.
Yeah. Yes.
And the reason I'm happy to do that is because the most important step is to get one of those progressives to step forward and say, no, Democratic leadership is not right. And publicly, honestly, they haven't. And that's why things are blowing up behind the scenes and things are blowing up in the movement, not just because of the howitzer and people not understanding the political process, but because of the inaction of the progressives in Congress. I mean, they're good on policy, they're good on the hearings, they've done a ton of things. It's totally unfair to say they haven't, but I don't think they've ever challenged Democratic leadership publicly. Am I seeing that wrong, or do you agree with that too?
No, I mean, look, Cenk, it's very obvious that there is a lack of intestinal fortitude among progressive elected officials in Congress and frankly, progressive elected officials across the country in taking on their own party's leadership, in actually trying to change the direction of the party, to actually challenge whatever word you want to call it, the Democratic machine, the Democratic establishment, the Democratic elite. I mean, you have seen this over and over and over again. I think you saw it. You've seen a lot of deference, even during the primary campaign, to Joe Biden among every candidate who is running for president in that primary. You've seen what I've called a tyranny of decorum from rank and file members of Congress towards their leadership, not really willing to take the full step into a confrontational posture. And I think what you're suggesting is that has left a vacuum. It has left people feeling, the progressive movement feeling unsatisfied and in some cases betrayed. And I think those feelings are absolutely legitimate. I think those feelings are a product of a lack of leadership. And I think if a good thing comes out of all of this, short of Medicare for all passing, if a good thing that comes out of this, I think it will be to express that sense of anger at a party, at a rank and file progressives for not spending political capital on taking on their own leadership.
Yeah, and so look, campaign contributions are nefarious. The people who take them think, if we're being generous, that they have no choice. If we're being ungenerous, they know the game that's being played and they're perfectly comfortable with it. But our guys, the progressives, don't take the corporate cash. They don't take corporate PAC money. So questioning their motives is not only mean-spirited, and I wouldn't mind that if you were going towards a cause and you were right, but it's just not true. So what actually happens is, and I've seen it with my own eyes, they get told a story about how they would be deeply offending their colleagues and how their colleagues are their new friends. And it's actually a really smart strategy because progressives want to be nice. So they turn around, they say, "No, you don't want to be mean to your beloved colleagues, do you?" And I've been trying to shake them out of that for over 2 years now. Your colleagues are not important. There are other people in power. Your voters are important. Your base is important. So, and unfortunately, they haven't listened to that, and now that's why part of the reason why we have this explosion. But I want to talk about forcing a vote because now people say, "Oh, Cenk, you just want us to wait." That's insane. No, I wanted to force a vote on this during the caucus. That was a month ago. So you're late to the party. But David, okay, fine. Going forward, I'd be in favor of forcing a vote on almost any so-called must-pass bill because the confrontation creates a debate, and the debate is important. I want to get back to that in a second, but I want to ask you specifically, going forward, past the speakership vote, what are the different places where progressives can force a vote where it would make a difference?
Well, I think, as I said, there's a bill that Ro Khanna has to empower Joe Biden's HHS secretary to be in a better position to give states the waivers that they need to create Medicare for all systems. Sounds like an esoteric thing, but is actually, I would argue, is an incredibly important, not just policy matter, but a political matter in this way. Having that bill pass on the books would empower Democratic state legislators throughout the country to take the Medicare for All campaign into their own communities in a very real way. Every state legislator in America who's a Democrat who wants to support Medicare for All could go into their communities and say, "We're trying to pass this in our state. We're not waiting for Congress. This is not some resolution just to tell our Congress people to do something right. We're gonna do it right here." California actually had a single payer bill in its own legislature, and one of the things that held it up was the concern that the HHS would not give them the necessary waivers to actually do this. So a vote on that actual bill, on that legislation, would actually have a chance, I would argue, to actually pass the Congress and could actually help the movement. The other thing that could be done is to have Democratic leaders put real, direct, confrontational pressure on Joe Biden to use executive authority to expand Medicare right now. One of the things that I'm really concerned about in all this conversation is that there's this idea that since Joe Biden won the election, since he's president, nobody has any leverage over him, so we shouldn't pressure him at all because the election's over and he's going to do whatever he wants. Meanwhile, he has arguably the power under current law to expand Medicare to cover more people in the pandemic. And so simply giving him a pass on that when the guy could actually just, with the stroke of a pen, actually expand Medicare? Giving him a pass is a waste. We need those members of Congress, the Democrats, to step up in a public way, demanding that the president who they helped elect actually deliver on something like that. I think that would be huge.
So look, we're running out of time here, but David, that goes to the very, very heart of it. I think that number one, there's two giant problems here. Number one, the media is the problem because they say, oh no, Pelosi and AOC are the same thing. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, Dr. Pelosi definitely wants Medicare for all, even though she has said she does not want Medicare for all. And they're like, I don't see it. Nope. I'm gonna call all of you radicals. The whole country wants Medicare for all. Every poll shows it. Nope. I'm gonna say the country doesn't want Medicare for all. I think mainstream media has an alternate reality that is arguably in some ways as thick as Trump's alternate reality. All right, David Sirota, everybody check out the Daily Poster. You guys are doing amazing work. Article after article.
Thank you, Cenk. Thank you, and thank you for your work and for your advocacy.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.